You're running full speed, but the markets are faster. Quasar Markets Live brings the world's top financial minds to you. Everything you need to know in one place. Learn from elite educators and gain a competitive edge, leveling the playing field for you. Join the conversation. Quasar Markets Live.
Good morning, everybody. Quasar Markets Live. Hope everyone's having a fantastic start to your trading week. BigBeat, how you doing, buddy?
Your Red Sox swept my Cardinals over the weekend.
Yeah.
I just to say, yeah.
Last night, that was ugly.
That was pretty ugly. Yeah, look. I was just on the show a few minutes ago, pre-market prep with Dennis Dick and Joel Elconin. I think we're posting it here, I think too, right? And look, they all asked me the same thing. You know, is anything on your screen green? Is what's going on? And I get it. You know, this is disheartening in a lot of ways to watch your portfolios, your 401ks, and everything that we've worked for over the last few months to kind of erode away. All because of the whim of a president who is pushing these tariff notions. Listening to Peter Navarro, the USTR, here a second ago on CNBC, and he clearly is, you know, they don't have. It's very clear to me as somebody who's worked in the White Houses, two of them, administrations, that they don't have a plan per se. It's not a written out plan. Here's what we're going to do. It's kind of like they're winging it and they're trying to figure it out as they go along. I mean, it's not unusual. They're not the only president to do that. But I would say that right now that they've got a clear picture of what they're doing. They're kind of throwing spaghetti. It's a spaghetti against the wall kind of feeling, right? And they're finding where that spaghetti's landing. And in this case right now, you're seeing it that Vietnam's like, wait a minute, we'll come back. And Japan's like, wait a minute, we'll negotiate. China's saying no, right? Why? Because they don't need the same thing. And I'll tell you what was interesting is this morning, and if you haven't done it yet, I suggest, and I get it's a long read, but Jamie Dimon wrote a pretty good paper this morning to the shareholder, which he does every year. But this one, he was really, really deep, dark about how we as a country need to produce things again here. They're getting back on track. But he said, you know, you've got to have businesses helping you. You know, you can't go alone. And you got to be able to. I'm okay with this, Howard. And over the weekend, I bought stock, and I bought the Qs, and I bought Bitcoin at 77.3. So I'm not too scared here.
You're the only one on this show. I mean, I'm not scared because I'm cash heavy, so I'm not scared personally. I haven't been in the market. I've talked about it on here. I think we are in for a longer fight here. I think you said the key thing. Yeah, Vietnam caved. Who cares? What did they buy from us? Zero.
Yes, but they produce Nike shoes. They produce Apple products.
So they bowed a little bit to American consumers who will do nothing to ward off recession.
You're right.
To help the global economy. It will do something to help Nike a little bit and Apple. So, you know, that's where I'm at. I am in the mood that we are definitely in a bear market. Bear markets last 6 months. They don't turn around overnight. It's even over time. And I think that's where we're at for right now. I think we're going to see earnings this week. We'll be able to tell. Earnings this week, JP Morgan, Wells Fargo, all the banks on Friday.
They are.
And that will tell the stories. Because what I'm noticing is a lot of analysts come out and say, hey, guess what? We're only at where we should be with valuations. We're really not down. We had high flying prices. We were at a elevated earnings like we hadn't seen since 1999. And now they've come down, you know, so I don't have a problem with any of that. You know, I have a problem with the way our administration's handling this whole tariffs and everything else, especially when you find out that Lutnick's company is heavily weighted towards bonds and has been since before he took office. If he knew he was going to crash the economy, there's a good way to make a lot of money doing it, right? There's a lot of problems when you really look into things right now. And when you have the biggest CEOs in the world fighting each other, that's not going to help everybody feel better either.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, that's right. You know, look, I said this earlier on the show on Thursday and Friday that if we find out that anybody in the administration was shorting the markets and heavily buying bonds, I think that there's needs to be some criminal situation here, because then they knew that it was going on and they had the inside stuff, and that's not good, right? But I will say this much. I'm not scared. I am definitely not scared. And I'll tell you, the president believes in business. And look, I don't. I asked the question on Quasar Marcus' Twitter page, right? Do you support the president's U.S. and I said U.S. president tariffs policy? I think we're like 18% says yes, right? Not many people do, but it doesn't mean that they don't understand the ins and outs of it. I think Peter Navarro said it best this morning. He's like, look, we still want to manufacture cars and we still want to buy cars from overseas, but we would prefer that they get made here, right? That rubber plants aren't doing it here, and then we put the tires on here in Akron as opposed to India. So, okay, I get that, right? But we as a country can't produce everything for everybody, right? We're not the breadbasket of the world. And some countries make things better than we do. And I tell you, as much as I love sushi, we don't make sushi that well. We made better in Japan. So I like it. If I'm going to eat caviar, it's not made better here.
Steve, we already got some questions coming in here from Shane Jameson. Thoughts on oil? I mean, again, that's a big one right now. Yeah. I'm hearing calls down for just as likely, analysts today, just as likely to hit 50 as it is to hit 65.
Yeah, look, hey, Shane, how are you, man? My friend for many years. Look, oil is a very interesting animal right now. Oil is also an indicator of recession. So oil at $70, everybody was happy. It was good. When oil's at $100 a barrel, they're excited, but they don't like it because it doesn't last very long, and it causes major disruptions because then people stop getting gas. I went to the Sam's Club was the other day, went by, and there was a line of getting gas, right?
Yeah, because it's the cheapest gas. Yeah,
correct. Okay, so let's fast forward a little bit on this. At right now, light sweet sitting at $60.82 a barrel. One thing the President Biden did for many times, because he dipped into it during COVID, was refilling the SPR. So every time that the oil price would dip a bit, smartly they would go in and buy a little bit more oil to replace it. It wouldn't go crazy because they didn't want to disrupt. Right? Well, this is disruption, right? And oil at $60 a barrel is pretty much telling you that there was a recession. Now, oil at $50 a barrel, 20 years ago, that was about where we are today, right? Because inflation and costs of, the carry costs. But right now, no, I'm not a big fan of oil right now. But I will tell you this much. If you're looking to buy oil to sell it later down the road, yes, you're seeing contango, meaning that the forward curve is a little higher. So oil prices right now are a good buy. If you're looking to invest in oil, yeah. And I would be picking up oil because the president himself actually he said it many times during COVID, President Trump, so that we needed to refill the SPR completely. Well, it's not completely filled up yet. So he's going to be buying some oil down here. So there's a kit there. Now, if we are going into recession, and you just said it yourself, Howard, that you think that we're into a bad market for the next 6 months. Ouch. I don't think that. But I think that when you look at it from that perspective, then yeah, it's somewhere in between. So if Howard thinks a bad market and I think a good market, it's somewhere probably in between the markets. So $65-$70 a barrel. You could probably buy some calls early, maybe some
absolutely
May, June-ish on the futures.
Awesome. Love that. Yeah, absolutely. And that would stick with my thesis. Again, that's when I think things bounce back. I just Vietnam and some of these smaller trade partners can capitulate. If Europe doesn't capitulate and China doesn't capitulate, it doesn't really matter. It really doesn't. Those two, and India. We have 3 countries that will determine. Yeah. And I think India could. I think India wants to form partnership. Here's what I do think. I think he's making a big bet that he can get the world order to be India closer with the U.S., Taiwan closer with the U.S., Vietnam closer with the U.S. I don't know how he cares about Latin America or not, because I haven't seen enough talk yet from his administration. Really, to me, it almost seems like they think that's low hanging fruit. When it comes to Africa and there, so we will see, what comes from that. But that's what I'm looking at. I do think, the Fed's going to have a closed board meeting. We're seeing some of these things start to come out. We do have news. We do have earnings on track starting today. Dave & Buster's, one of my favorite companies out there in the world to go play at. In fact, call play. And Levi Strauss is the one I'm going to be watching today, Steve, to be honest with you, when it comes to that. So
I get it. Yeah. But one interesting we just had some news come out. I'll post it again. The Fed will have a closed board meeting on April the 7th. There is one thing that, I was just asked again, what my biggest issue here is, that is really bothering me. Is it Ukraine? No. I think that will solve itself. I don't like the situation at all there. Is it Vietnam? Is it China? Is it any of those issues? No. It's whether or not the Fed has an intermeeting cut. If they do that, then yeah, watch out below. The markets will sell off like you wouldn't believe, because there's more problems than they think. The Fed is getting, and it is what Powell asked for, was more clarity. He said he wanted more clarity as to the administration.
Right.
I'll be honest with you, this administration is about as clear as mud. We don't know what they're doing. We don't know what the numbers are. That formula they came up with is complete nonsense. As a calculus guy myself, I didn't understand that formula at all. I thought it was a big nonsense. I don't even know who did that. Some high school kid. That wasn't even pre-calculus there, Howard.
Yeah, I'm with you. That's what worries me. There isn't, I believe they got a plan. I don't know what the plan is, and it doesn't seem like everybody on the team knows the plan fully.
Okay, then I would agree with that. Maybe the president and maybe the USTR have the plan, and Howard Lutnick has a plan, Scott Bessent, but they seem to go in there, and we just heard again that when they're in the Oval Office that they seem to argue about it. I mean, we heard just a few minutes ago.
And that's what I mean is, that like I said, is my concern is not long-term that the U.S. we're in trouble. I do think we're the place to still invest versus the rest of the world. My thing is that I just think we're in for 3 to 6 months of this headache. I don't think it goes away quickly, because I don't think our president will give up. I mean, again, if China goes 100%, he'll go 200, and then they'll go 300. And where does that end, and where does that get us? And the other part is that I know from watching, like you said, Sam's Club and everything else, we are the consumers. We are, it's just that simple. We can't help ourselves. My wife was out this weekend at Hobby Lobby buying her stuff, and, all these little shutskis, as I call them, around the house never stop. So, we love that stuff. We love it more than any other country. And,
but I will say this much, Howard. I will say this much. I think you're seeing a slowdown in that, though.
I hope, we'll see it in earnings. I mean, that's what I want to see. Levi's today. I want to see, are people buying jeans still? That's a tough one, because I think you still need those for work.
Well, I will say this much. If you go on Amazon, look at Levi jeans, you're seeing major discounts on jeans already.
On everything. Everything's on sale right now. All you got to do is look, stocks especially. I will say I did pick up my wish list order at 75K on Bitcoin, got filled overnight while I was asleep. Nice. I tell everybody I put those in. I've been targeting that price. I have more set at 73.5. I do think we're going to hit that 73.5 before we see the full recovery. It just brings us to where we took off from.
Right. And I think you got the 75 because there was low volume during the session, and it's the path of least resistance, right? And it went right to the numbers and got your number and lifted it right immediately, right? So
yeah, huge like wick, nice looking wick on Bitcoin right now.
Yeah,
great
and
daily wick.
And they've tested that a few times now, and I think we might look. I don't mind calling bottoms on markets. I don't have a problem with that. That's why I sit in the chair that I sit in, right? But I will say this much, Howard, that there's so much bad going on in the world that if we have a little bit of good, this market's going to take off.
And again, hey, I want to point out some of the best days the S&P and Qs have seen are during a bear market. So I'm not saying this isn't tradable. I'm not saying that we won't have jumps up. I don't think we test those highs that we saw, in January again till July or so.
Yeah, Steve Flanagan's asking if there'll be an intermeeting cut. I don't think so. I think Powell wants to stick to it, but I think that they're digesting a little bit more of that data coming out. That's what, again, I reiterate, that's what Powell said he wanted. He wanted more clarity on the tariffs, and they're starting to get a little more clarity. I just don't think that we're at the level that they think that they're going to be at, right? So I don't know right now. will there be an intermediate cut? I really do not want to see that. That would definitely mean that we're going into a recession and that we have a massive problem. So no,
I guess what I'd have to ask too is, again, the concern that I have is that I think the Fed might have thought on Friday that their job got done by the president because we saw this drop on the 10-year go so far down. But now that it's quickly recovering back up to 4.05, might put them in a tougher spot. Do you think that might be the case with the Fed in general? You know what I mean? I think
the bond market right now is predicting a recession. There's no doubt about that, right? The 10-year now holding above 4%. It means they're raising rates, that they're trying to attract more money into the bond market. Look, I'll tell you why I think it's happening. I think the Chinese are going to start to sell off their treasuries against us. So they own a lot. Look, for everybody who wants to know, no country owns the United States. If you want to know who owns the most treasury bonds and treasury notes of the United States, it is Social Security and the American people, right? They are the ones who own the majority of our own. We take Social Security and we shove it into treasury notes. The money goes back to us. I think Navarro said it best. When countries borrow from us, our money goes out of the country to pay the interest. We don't want to do that. We don't want money to leave the country. So we only want to leave when they're buying product from us, not taking some of our owning some of us, right? So no, I don't think so. I think we as a country will, they're already raising rates now, which the president's saying, please just lower rates. The Fed needs to lower rates. Now, I will say that if Powell comes out and says in the interim meeting and says, we're going to cut, but we're going to cut because the president has asked us to, and he sees something. That's a very different answer than, oh my God, the world's falling apart. We got to do cuts. That's what I don't want to see.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. The fact that they even have it on the schedule is going to spook people, though. Unfortunately, also.
Yes, of course. Yes.
I've put up our main economic data for the week, most of it coming later in the week that really will make any kind of difference. And as I said, earnings reports today, we have Dave & Buster's, GBX, and Levi's. Tomorrow you got Walgreens, will be kind of interesting to keep an eye at tomorrow. Tilroy on the cannabis side, but that sort of market has died off, and it really doesn't come back until we get to Friday with anything specific. But on Friday, as I have up here, you have Fastenal, you have BK Mellon, New York, you have Wells Fargo, Morgan Stanley, BlackRock. A lot of the different financial companies will report on Friday. And
you know what all of those companies have? They all have trading revenue, right? And so if you're selling stock, they're making a lot of revenue.
They help. Yeah, that helps.
So they're probably going to show some good stuff here. Yeah.
Yep, you would hope so. From that, so we will see what that
implied open right now. And the Dow is down 1,000 points here. So I don't expect to have a good open here. It's going to be rough. Right now the advanced decline line is down 4,400. Ouch. And this is not 1 day or 2 days, right? This is like 3 days in a row here.
This is the third day. Yeah, this is the third meltdown. That's what I'm saying is that's I just don't think we're out of it yet. I do think that there will be some great opportunities to pick up value. I do think there'll be some nice moves to the upside that you'll see. I do think bulls are going to try to win here and there when they can take out the bears. But right now, I think like you said, the path of least resistance, definitely a little bit to the downside. But
I don't think so. I think the path of least resistance is the upside.
Do you know? Okay.
Because I think the problem is that we've already seen the sell-off, right?
I'm still nervous about that 4.7 billion that was bought last week on that first dip. That hasn't been sold off yet.
Correct. And I think people are buying these dips down here. And I think
but I think they're out of money and they're also nervous, and margin calls start coming and all those things I saw on social media over the weekend. People nervous about what happens, even 1% to 2% down today will cause a lot of that liquidation to the downside. That's why I think that's why I say there's less resistance to the downside right now. That's where we're at. There are going to be a lot of forced liquidations, and that's easy prey for the bigger fish in the market. They can push it down to start off to move it up. Worldwide markets here getting hit pretty hard overnight. Stocks for sure. Oh, I'm on the wrong watch list here. Hold it. There it is. Stocks down about 4.42% here. It has bounced back during the session a little bit. Hit a low of about 464 overnight. now back at 493. So again, could see that initial sell-off in the US, and we could mirror that very much here today. The one that hasn't bounced back, though, has been out of China. Again, this trade war there has definitely exacerbated issues. The hang down 13.22% here. We did see overnight a couple of the circuit breakers go off. I know South Korea was delayed. Nikkei was delayed on some of their opening stuff because of that. Nikkei has recovered, though, nicely, too, only down 2.27%. You can see, again, they were down as low as 30,424 before getting back up to 31,500 here and moving back towards the high of the day. So we are seeing some buyers step in. So hopefully we see that come across the U.S. markets. Also, Bitcoin nicely recovering above 77K here again after getting as low as 74,434 overnight.
Yeah, I mean, you're stuck looking at crude of futures again. Here we go, slipping even more here under 60.56 now. It's nerving. I mean, people are nervous, but I don't. Under $60 a barrel. I mean, I think it's a buy. I mean, anytime under $60 a barrel. So I'm not.
That's always been, and one thing I will point out when it comes to some of these numbers that Steve pulls out, you saw it with UNG 3 or 4 times during the fall into the winter. These numbers historical. This isn't, just picking a number out of a hat. Steve's watched this for 40 years, and he's right. These are the numbers, that's historically are buy opportunities, without a doubt. I just do want to point that out.
I think we should talk about today the JP Morgan Chase Jamie Dimon letter to the shareholders. I really felt that
I got a lot of notes on that for you. Sure.
Yeah, it was a very interesting letter. I wanted to pull some of the talking points out of it for myself. The 2 things that I really pulled out of the whole letter was he said 2 things. That we got to solve this problem, right? That we got to be a very civil country. We are the United States of America. We are the breadbasket of the world. So we need to understand that we need to restore some civic pride, humility, shared values, and common sense. That's kind of one of the things he said on one side of that. He also said that on the other side of that we need to draw a direct line between economic policy and national security, saying he wants resilient supply chains. So I think he's referring to the Houthis there. Domestic energy production, drill baby drill in a lot of ways, strategic investment in military and AI tech, thinking that, the bully pulpit and, carry a big stick and speak softly, and AI tech, that technology will get us out. We don't want China to be leading there. And that we coordinate our foreign policy with strong allies, meaning that we don't piss off our friends. So there's a mixture of good and bad. If he's talking about the administration, he's criticizing it, but also saying, look, I understand what they're trying to do, but we got to find a better way of doing it. And that's kind of what I've been saying the whole way. I don't agree with the sledgehammer politics of just this beat down the whole world. But I was listening to Peter Navarro, the USTR, U.S. trade rep, was saying that, look, I want things produced here. Right, I want the tires made here, and I want people in our factories producing. I don't disagree with that. I agree with that, right? But I also believe that we need to buy things based on what we like. So if we like our car, make a better car, right? Don't just be cheap on it. So there's a lot of things that.
Yeah, I mean, it's all good and well to say that, but I was watching when it came to cars. What labor is in a factory. In the U.S., it averages $60 an hour. In Mexico, it's $6, and in Canada, it's $20. So how are we going to build tires at $60? Can we do that? I mean, I'm just being honest. Can it get done?
If the thinking of the American people is different, that, hey, I don't mind spending extra money because I'm putting someone to work. Okay, that's true. But we had that thought in the 1950s and the 60s after World War II because there wasn't any supply lines. Europe was destroyed. There was no manufacturing.
Absolutely.
That's what we keep talking about, the World War II economy, right? That economy is gone. It's dead. I mean, we need to change the world. And I think that's what Trump is saying. Like, the world's been remade, but not remade in the way that we wanted it made. It was remade in their ideas. Hey, we understand that it's U.S. exceptionalism, right? And right now we're hearing Stanley Flanagan asking the question: global equity declines combined with the weakness in global economies will force major negotiations this week. Negotiations with who? I think the question is.
And Steve Flanagan's been saying that for 3 weeks, 4 weeks,
Yeah.
and it hasn't happened. So, again, I don't have any faith in our administration to cleanly and smartly look at something and come to the table. They want people to come with bended knees.
Hey, if Steve Flanagan wants to come on the show and defend that comment, I'm okay with that too.
Well, he's on soon. But that's, hey, listen, this is what it is. We heard for weeks leading up to the tariffs getting kicked off that this was a negotiating tool and we wouldn't get to the tariffs. Then we got there and the same people said the same things. And guess what? We went over the cliff, and now we dove over the cliff and everybody says we got a parachute. How many times are we gonna, it's like hearing this, it's the same words and the same hopes, but it's the same White House and the same administration that doesn't believe really in negotiation. They want to walk over and again, I agree that we have to change what has been incorrect for generations and, is definitely exasperated in the last 10 years, which is, a change in the world order of China to reshape it in their eyes. And we do need to change that. But you can't do it by beating everybody up in the world and then hope that you get the ones that you want to side with you and do it. It just, again, it's just not the way I look at it. And what we're allowing is by dismantling the American-led alliances of Bretton Woods, NATO, IMF, and UNI and everything that they're threatening to leave, you're opening that door even wider to what we don't want to see. And you're opening it. You're literally opening doors that were shut. And that's what worries me, so that, that's like I said, we do need to reform all of those different entities, but we can't just walk away from them because the world won't walk away from them. And if you want to,
we're living from tweet to tweet. We're living from policy to policy, and American people don't want to do that. Nobody wants to live this way, right? We all want to live where we live our lives and not have to worry about the markets every 5 minutes, stuck to some news because someone's tweeting about, let's not be panic hands or whatever the hell he was talking about a few minutes ago. People just want to live. They want to enjoy life, and they don't want to have to worry about this all the time. And it seems that lately the markets have been so crazy on both sides that they don't know what to do, right? Buy, sell, crazy, go. And I think that's the problem right now is that the world is becoming a little smaller, a little faster.
And we're back to protests. We were hoping protests would go away. And again, protests throughout the country over the weekend. And that's part of the other issue is that, that you're just starting the internal strife is coming again. And that doesn't help.
We're now seeing President Trump now, I will post this here because it's kind of a long to post. I think we got it. There we go. I'll put it in banners. So that way it makes it a lot easier for everybody to see it. He is talking now. If I can put it. It says countries from all over the world are talking to us. Tough but fair parameters are being set. Spoke to the Japanese Prime Minister this morning. He's sending a top team to negotiate. Okay.
Yeah, that's what we want. They're
not going to bend the knee, are they?
If if we see that, then we will pump right out of this. But I've got to see us at least get to the table with somebody and see an actual, something come from it before I am convinced.
1 minute till the open here, about a minute and a half here.
Advanced decline down 47.02. VIX is at 48.99. Steve.
What's interesting is Trump is now talking again, whereas over the weekend he wasn't. He was saying he was golfing and said we need to take our medicine. That's not normal for a president to say that. In fact, that was pretty bad. Now he's coming back and saying, okay, things are getting better. Look, we're talking to people.
But again, I want to hear that from the other side too, because as we all know, again, what President Trump has said is happening and what the other world leaders think are happening. Didn't we bring someone in from the Ukraine that we were getting a treaty done?
Yeah, he said that Warren Buffett loves his policies, and Warren said no. I don't know
Yeah,
that
that's all I'm
that's not
saying is,
true,
again,
right?
it's great to say Vietnam's coming and Japan's coming and everybody's coming, but we're not hearing that from the foreign countries. We're only hearing it from our
But the
White House.
Japanese prime minister did say that they are coming. So
Okay,
that
well,
is
there you go.
cool. Let's do that. Let's see how that. But it's only Japan, right? I want to see it from the perspective of places that we really.
Got to be China and the
It
EU.
needs to
It's
be
got
China and Russia. We need to clear these up.
and the EU. Again, the EU is not stepping away from this
The
either.
VIX now is up 9% right now.
Yeah,
Nvidia
40, like
dropping
I said,
down
49. It's at
7%.
49 again. Yeah.
Yeah. VXX at 81.34 right now. I think it's a good time to buy, to be honest with you. I like this right now.
There you go. Here we go. We are open. Q's open at 407.75 or so. So that's going to be the line to keep an eye on to start off with, 407.75.
Altria MO, which is one of the biggest stocks when you go defensive, because people are smoking, whether they're in good times or bad times, and it's also down 5%. Bitcoin is not holding up as the VIX continues to push up here.
Yeah, because the ETFs are going to sell they got to sell the outflows. So that's
Yeah.
going to happen right away. That's an easy call. You're going to see a drop, and then we'll see if we get a recovery. Lucky charts. I love to smell a napalm in the morning. Yep, absolutely, my friend. I like that Q is staying above 407.75. So far, I like the way it's holding up so far. So let's see what we can get out of this.
Look, I at this point, the path of least resistance is not to the downside. It is to the upside, because we've already had these sell-offs. I mean, if you're looking to sell off now, oh my goodness gracious, you missed it, right? Okay, tick about to go positive, but only down 280 now, where it was down over 1,000 earlier. Now down 270. So if a tick goes positive here, I think this is where the buyers start stepping in.
Advanced decline minus 68.73. VIX just broke above 50.50. I'm still staying on the other side of that.
Nvidia now $90 here. Okay, there we go. And down 95 on the tick. About to go down 62. About to go positive here.
Yeah, same as we did Thursday morning and Friday morning at this time.
Yeah.
So let's see if there's any legs on it today.
Tick down 156. I see where the
Loving
New York
409 here. Loving what you're seeing out of the Qs here. Break of 410 would be really positive here to start off the day. See if we can hold up here. Ticks negative about 100. Advanced decline down almost 7,000. And the VIX now up 11.37% here this morning.
60 and a quarter there now, barrel about to drop on the oil there again.
And VIX Q's shot down at that 408 level now at 407.39. So first attempt to move to the upside has been thwarted. We'll see if we can get it. Tick back negative 353 here. We seem to be trying. Well, we're sort of stuck in that same zone. I like 408 though, holding above it here. See what we can get. This last minute hasn't looked all that great. Tick minus 339. Advanced decline back above 7,000 to the downside here. So again, that quick move up has been sold off pretty quickly. I'll be watching VIX here closely today. Anything above 50 keeps me in a no man's land personally. Need to see that come down. Bitcoin back above 77, though. That's good to see. Nice strength holding up there, so that's good. 10-year back at 4.039 here, so we do see rates starting to tick back up a little bit towards the high side. And as we look at the Spider Select funds, all 11 opening up to the downside, everything down at least 2.5%. Best performer so far is XLP, which is consumer staples.
Steve Flanagan said European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said on Monday that they were ready to negotiate with the U.S. on tariffs. And we just had breaking news out of AFP saying yeah, even better here, that Europe is saying 0 for 0 tariffs here.
Nice. Well, that's what you need to see if that could work. And Qs are bouncing back up to trying to get to 408. 408 seems to be the struggle here. Never mind the 410. I was hoping to see us stay above here this morning, but we are trying to break back above that 408. There you go. 408 is the line in the sand so far this morning on the Qs to keep an eye on. As we are open here, we are still negative, now negative about 7,100. Mag 7 getting hit pretty hard here with Tesla down now another 7% to 222. Nvidia down at 87.80, down another 7%. Also, Apple 176.11 and losing to the downside here, down almost 7% also. So the mag getting hit the hardest so far. If we look at banks again, they will be the first to see earnings this week. I do think that will be what matters the most. What do we see out of earnings this week? JP Morgan down almost 3%. Bank of America down 1.22. Wells Fargo down almost 3. Morgan Stanley down 3.72. All four of those have earnings later this week. Again, chips getting hit mostly the hardest here, down almost 7% across the board. Crypto stocks getting hit real hard too. MSTR down 11%. Coinbase down 8%. Mara down 8%. So all of the crypto mining stocks look like they're down anywhere between 6 and 10%.
Didn't Trump say that if he got elected, the markets would boom? If Biden got elected,
they are booming to the downside. He just didn't say which way.
He said if you hire,
they are booming.
If you hire,
listen, how many times did Trump during the last administration post after a bad couple of days that if the Dow was down 1,100, we should get rid of the president and all that? It's done all that in the last 3 days. The rhetoric's the rhetoric. That I don't play that game.
Yeah, but when you look at it, you have to hear what he has to say.
I know, but you know what I mean is that that's all rhetoric from both sides. That's where I try not to get involved. Is with that stuff where it worries me and why I still am bearish is, again, just talking to people on the streets over the weekend, seeing the protests in DC and talking to friends in DC that were around. And then we're back in they compared it to the Occupy Wall Street stuff again. Those of us that lived through that was a nightmare in these major cities. Our boy George Soros is not going to lie down. He's going to take advantage of this to the most of his ability. And the Open Foundation, whatever it's called, Open Society Foundation, they're going to do all that stuff. Again, that's why I say this. I've lived in DC for 30 years and watched how this plays out. And I'm not talking from the Wall Street side. I'm talking from the politics side. And that's what I'm keeping an eye on, Steve, as you know.
VXX now at 83.40 now. It's up almost a little over 11%.
Yeah, VIX up 52%, 15%. It's telling you the market doesn't trust those headlines, right? I mean, that's the problem, is no one trusts the headlines because we've seen them for 3 weeks. We've seen them for a month. Yeah, we've heard the experts come on and say this wasn't going to hit this levels. And they did. So now people are like, you know what, maybe Mr. Ackerman's right, and maybe Mr. Navarro is not. And that's what people are looking at. To use some of the lines from Jamie Dimons again that I took core of was, the fact that we need national renewal. We need to celebrate American values and civic pride. And that's what I'm saying. We need to fix domestic dysfunction. Like he nailed it. Like I said, I agree with everything Jamie.
Okay, but it's one thing to say it. How do you do
it? I don't know.
Okay,
when you don't do, okay, well, no, I'll tell you how we do it. It's unfortunately the president before this screwed that up, in my opinion, because he was in a perfect spot to reach across the aisle when he took over.
And he did not
work with the moderates and people like and here's what I think, Steve. Who's pissed off right now? Me. You know why? Because I'm a moderate that doesn't follow both sides, that tries to use common sense as my denominator for what's right and wrong. And nobody in the U.S. politics seem to.
All right, so somebody that's not on either side, talk to me. What do you want to hear from the president that will change your mind?
I want to hear an actual plan. Like, what is Doge going to do? Like, where are you going to save this money? Where's it going to be placed? Reassure me you're not going after Social Security. Give me some guarantees. This is what I am going to do. This is what I'm not going to do. You know what I mean? Is what we're hearing is vagaries and the world will come to us. What I want to hear is we're going to work together. We're going to make America great again because we're all going to come together. Right now, nobody wants to come together with him in the U.S., so it makes it hard to believe that we can get some of these things in place that we need. Because, as you know, he has only 24 months, right? If you don't get this stuff done in 24 months, then it's a lame duck, and it comes quicker than that.
I think he's already a lame duck president because you're
no, you're right. Because you're right. Well, what it is does he nuke it? And what we still need is the threat, and I don't want to use that in the wrong way when I say that. We need the threat of J.D. Vance being the next president and all that stuff to bring everybody to the table, so to speak, for calmer heads to prevail and for us to get together as a country to move this in the right way. When I see the VIX at 52.50, I see us down another almost 4% on the SPY, 3.75% on the Dow. It just tells me that like I said, it seems crazy, but why is my statement, why is there more downside? Because again, retail buyers bought the story on Thursday and they put $4.7 trillion that they probably didn't have in their pockets, unfortunately, as we warned them not to. They reached into margin, they reached into leverage, and they shot their wad, so to speak, on Thursday. And now they don't see that quick bounce back. They're the ones that are going to sell today. They're the capitulation. But there's 4.7 trillion of it still to come. That's where I'm at, buddy. I mean, that's where my thesis is. 53 now on the VIX, up 17%. Now down. Q's 4.13 to the downside. I don't want to be the bearer of bad news. And again, I'm playing it to the downside. That's how I have been for a week. It's been very successful. I wish it wasn't the case, and I'll be wrong, and I will be very happy to be wrong because I'll have a stop loss quickly in place to the upside as these shorts cover. But right now, there are still.
But I think that's the key right there, Howard. I think you just said it, right? People aren't selling; they're just short, right? That's what's happening. They're not.
Right now, people are just jumping on the short. They're saying, "I got to jump in."
That's what I'm saying. The passive
scares you. That's why again, I'm going to have a tight stop loss on these. And I'll be ready to follow. Steve, I've said this. This is where our trading's a little different. I will give up 1 or 2% of that return coming on the upside to see it prove itself. You are much better at doing this for 40 years. I haven't, to catch that and to know when those wins or sales, as Steve Flanagan's talked about. And again, I believe when it comes to trading, he is no one's more on than he's been when it comes to that stuff. Is that ship it turning around in the lake? It causes some ripples. We'll see that stuff turn. I want to see it turn. I'm not going to be caught, trying to catch that knife. That's my tolerance doesn't work that way. I am a momentum trader, and right now my momentum is to the downside. So I'll continue to follow it, and I'll set stop losses for these shorts when they cover, and then we'll go again, and then we reevaluate, and you play the hand in front of you, right?
I mean,
that's one thing you should be happy with all this, because I wouldn't have been this way 8 years ago until I listened to you and I learned these things. So you can't get angry at me.
Well,
this is all stuff you've taught me.
Everybody's selling everything, right? I mean, gold's even going down.
And that's the other part that I've pointed out, Steve, right? Is that when everything's selling off, it's just a race to cash right now. Everybody is in that same boat, race to cash. And that's all I'm saying.
But Howard, Warren's already in cash.
He's been in cash for months, and we were wrong. Again, we thought maybe he was too early, right? He nailed it again. The guy nailed it. There's no other way to say it.
Well, he has inside information too. So
absolutely, and he's listening again. He's
no grandfather in the old days. He's not. I mean, he's got lots of feelers out there. He knows what's going on.
Yeah, his channel checks run so deep and long, and again, he's made mistakes. He's been deep into the Nikkei, which has taken a bigger beating than U.S. stocks. So again, I don't want anyone to think that everybody is right all the time. That's not the case. But these are the people that that I'm sort of listening to. I was listening to you. The difference is just that my spidey sense is still tingling. Yours sort of came off. We were both in the same state for all of this for the last month, and I've just been a little bit more hesitant. And I do think, again, I have strong.
Yeah, like when Palantir was at $30, I was like, that's silly because there's all these government contracts. Palantir at 140, that was absolutely nonsense because those contracts weren't, and people didn't understand it, and they chased, right? And guess what happened to Palantir? Right back down it went because they were chasing. And this is what's happening again. They're chasing the wrong side of the ball now because the ball is moved. The court is moved. Everything is moved. And all you got to hear is one little thing, and boom, this is going to take off the upside. Yeah, we lost the 200 points in the Dow here because people are, they're chasing. I don't chase the markets. You chase the markets.
Wow, 53.77 on the VIX, Steve, up 19% almost now.
Really, but you know what happens to the VIX every single time it gets up?
Goes off. Yeah, now it actually gets on my radar as it approaches 60. I'm getting ready to short it. I'd
be shorting the VIX with both hands, and I think that's probably
at 60. I'm waiting for it to get a little further up.
I'm not even gonna wait. Why wait for it?
You're right. Yeah, if I'm looking at you're right, because again, the way that Steve and I normally play this is looking out a month, buying at this point now puts, not calls. You could sell some calls. But I mean, volatility is that high. You might want to sell. You might want to sell calls here. Maybe you're selling some 60s for next month. Let's see what they're at, But yeah, I do like that. I agree. You don't have to wait for the VIX to make it all the way here to make a move. That'd be my move. I like that a lot. Tick still negative 640 here, 7,600 on the advanced decline to the downside, Steve. Q's now 4.5 to the downside. I just realized I'm not showing my screen here. Let me go to this one. Sorry, everybody. So we do have Dow Jones down about 4.2% here. Well, we start to see the Dow hasn't been at this level since now we've gone to lows we didn't see all last year, Steve. That's the other thing that will start to scare people because these words will start to come out. You know what I mean? Is, up until a few days ago, we were still saying, it was the old Bitcoin one. Hey, we haven't been at 80,000 since January 1st. It's one of those, it hasn't been long. But now we start to get back in. The Dow just broke down for the first time.
And the tick just went up to 230 points. I mean, it's like, I'm not scared of this market. I get it. It sucks. Not fun. And a lot of people are out there going, ooh, but and some people are short the market. Good for them. But they're going to be covering, and they're going to be covering quickly, I think. I like this. I like this market. I said this earlier on this show earlier that, if you liked Nike at, before, you're surely going to love Nike now. So, yeah.
Lucky Charts sort of nailed it here. I love sledgehammer politics to the ivory towers. Banks get bailed out. Wall Street gets bailed out, but I had to sell my business because Amazon was moving into town while corporate gets taxpayer-funded subsidies. Yeah, buddy, I'm sorry to hear that. But, yep, I mean, that's exactly what happens. And that's why the anger, and that's why there is so much strife, so to speak, about in the markets right now and across the U.S. 76.50 to the downside. Wow.
And there's no reason for it, right? There's no reason for it. If you had a plan, implement the plan. And doesn't need to take it. He did this in like 2 weeks. There was nothing going bad 2 weeks ago until he's this sledgehammer politics, I call it. Look, I don't like it. This is not the plan of the president. It should not be what the Oval Office, the bully pulpit does, where you just change course overnight. It's not a good place to be and hit the whole world at one time. That's why you're seeing the sell-offs. It's the whole world at one time.
And I guess, Stephen, and I would say this, again, and not that I think any politician would do this, but when you're coming out with the tariffs, be very honest about what's going to happen over the next few weeks while this happens. Now it's like, take your medicine. Well, what were you saying when a month ago? You weren't saying your medicine was coming. You know what I mean? Is that's sort of that's where the anger comes out from a lot of people, myself included, is some of that stuff. So, hey, VIX come down 51.85. Like we said, if you just listen to us, it was at 53 and change when Steve said he liked shorting it here, although it is moving back up a little bit, but 53 and change. Steve brought that up. There's money to be made. There's definitely money to be made in these markets. Without a doubt, volatility can be your friend.
I would not be shocked today if we saw a green day.
Really? Wow. I can see us finish. I do think we finish higher than we are now. I'll say that. I just don't know.
I would not be shocked if we saw a green day today.
Something just spooked the market to the upside nicely. That just jumped up about.
And I'll tell you,
$5 on the Q.
Because I've said it all along that the path of least resistance is not to the downside. We have too many people are just jumping on the bandwagon to go short. Great, enjoy. I think you're wrong. I think you're totally wrong. But that's about what I'm talking about to buy or sell. We don't do that. But I think it's wrong. I think you've already seen the selling and the capitulation. And yeah, did I say capitulation on Friday? Yeah, did I say it last week? Yeah. Are we down farther from there? Yes. But we saw an upside. We saw some downsides. I don't see more downside here unless the president just completely just comes out with a bad tweet, and which it fair late to say that he might, but I don't think so. I think the White House hears the American people, that they're crying right now. I posted a question on our own Twitter. Do you approve of the president's tactics? And 18% said yes. The rest said no. Right? That tells you everything. So I think he hears, but his response was, you got to take some medicine for the bad. And he's right. Yeah. He's absolutely right. We cannot sustain $1 trillion every year deficits. It's just not going to work.
No, like I said, there are fundamental things that are correct. And as Lucky Charch has pointed out, the markets were over leveraged. That's what I said. That's what I said earlier, right? Is we were too high, and this brought us down. There is, my part of that is, what's that?
There wasn't a time that I didn't say that we were over leveraged. I even said it just a few minutes ago. Palantir was outrageous. These stocks, Nvidia was outrageous.
Well, you said it whenever I would ask you the last couple of months, are you liking this at this level? No. Your answer would be no, and we'd moved on because you were right.
I didn't like it back then, and I don't like it now. I think that's what the markets are, right? The markets, exactly, it's why they exist, because the mispricing of pricing. The price now is way mispriced to the downside, and prices were way.
Definitely, and I've been listen. I spoke of value last week. Now, so you can imagine how I feel about value now. And this is
there's Nvidia back over $90. We're at the highs of the day now. Look at that, ticks up 700. I think the selling was too much.
Yeah. It's trying to move again, though. We're still in that same time zone, though. We got to be careful in this first 45 minutes of the market.
77,200 again back on Bitcoin. 73. It's where I bought last. This I'm saying. This selling was stupid this morning.
Yep. But again, it can stay irrational longer than we can stay solvent. So that's what you got to be careful about.
And look at the VXX right now, 81.19. If you're listening to me at 85, you thought, okay, yeah, that was too high. And I agree with that. It was way too high.
Yeah, you nailed it on fit. You said it at 53.60 was when you mentioned it on the VIX, and that's pretty much the high of the day. We did get up quickly to 60, but that was actually before you spoke.
77.5 right now on Bitcoin. So here we go. I mean, I'm not too concerned about this. I like a lot of this is just zero DTEs. They're trying to figure out the markets, and they're going to get burnt today. This is not a day. This is a great day to skim, if you want to skim, as I always say, or this is a good day. This is a greater day if you have a longer time frame. Right? If you're looking to scalp a little bit, I can totally see that. But if you're looking to bang out Microsoft and Apple and some good quality companies down the road, and you see it moving higher, then this is definitely the place. Look at that, 91 now on Nvidia. I'm telling you, we could go positive today. I'm not kidding. I think we could go positive today. 77.7 now on Bitcoin. 77.6.
412 on the Qs, so we are moving nicely to the upside. So we broke that 410, but we got to see. You can see where your resistance zones are pretty strong here.
Yeah, tick still up 700 here, 650. You got a pretty good deal down there at $86 on Nvidia. 86.62 is a low. I mean, and today the 52-week range is 75. You got a hell of a deal there on Nvidia. That's what I said earlier today. If you liked it at over 100 on Nvidia, you sure as hell like it now at 91, right?
Absolutely.
Right. I'm okay with it. 91.20 now, the highs of the day. There you go. 77.6 again on Bitcoin. I thought last night was where it was at. Okay, a little bit more selling overnight, and congrats to you. That's what I've always said. If you don't understand what Howard was doing, Howard had orders in where he thought the price could go to and didn't know if it would go there. And it was like, and I always call it stupid orders. Put your stupid orders in. You never know. They may get picked up, especially in markets like Bitcoin and crypto. They can easily, where there's no leverage, 77.8 now on Bitcoin. Right. Yep. This is what I'm saying. 92 now on Nvidia. I'm telling you right now, we could go positive in the markets today. I said that at the lows of the day. I think we go positive today. There's a good damn chance we do it.
Yeah, absolutely could, without a doubt. If we can break above, that 416 level, we will, but you got to break 416 first to get back up to that spot. We'll see if we can do it. We've run out of momentum at a lot of these key resistance. That's what we'll keep an eye on. Gold down about $3,010 here, broke below 3,000 over the weekend and actually overnight. I was a little surprised by that.
Still pushing higher. Biddy, the highs of the day are 92.38.
10 years, what's moving up nicely too here, Steve, back at 4.058 now. So, that interest rate drop that we saw, since tariff news came out, we've almost retraced all of that. I don't know if that's good news or bad news, though, when it comes to
92.50 now. Look, here's one thing for sure. The Fed's going to cut rates now. I mean, they've said they got a clearer picture. Look at that, 77.9 now, almost 78,000 on Bitcoin. If you were with me yesterday, or 77.3 was where I was buying. I posted that on my own. For those of you who don't know, both myself and Howard both have, and we can post that here, our Twitter handles. I'll post mine too for everybody.
And you can just click the link in the title for those of you that are wanting to see us. I have Steve's Twitter handle and my Twitter handle in the title of our show.
Yeah.
There you go. Nice. Q's now 412.42, only down 2.45. We were down over 4%, got as low as 402. Trying to break to the highs here. Now 413. Here we go, Steve. Can you get the run we're looking for here? Again, the key spot I'm watching is 416. Any break above that, and I do think Steve is correct, but we got to break that 416 area first. We'll see if we can get past that resistance. What I've noticed is what's happened is when we hit a couple of spurts in the early morning, if we can't break that spurt early in the first hour, we haven't been able to slide up and have that melt up type day. So that's what we'll keep an eye on here. So far now, tick up 1,000, Steve. There you go.
There we go.
Bitcoin 73. So we've knocked 500 off the advanced decline. We're not going to see that advanced decline move all that much because things were down 4 or 5%. So keep that in mind.
78,000 on Bitcoin just hit right there.
Nice.
Now, look at this. NVIDIA 92.62. I keep talking about NVIDIA because it's a popular product. I mean, people are using it. Look at that, tick up 1,000, still holding up there 1,000. We could go, I'm telling you, we're going to go positive, 78.2 right now. For those of you who are listening to me on this show, at the low of the day, I called it, we're going to go positive. You saw it, I said it. So here we are. 93 now on NVIDIA.
No, we're not. We're still down 2%, 2.3%.
We're going to go positive today, I think.
Okay, I love it, but we can't call it till it does. Q is trying to do it first, only down 2% here, so they are continuing to move to the upside.
93.12 now on NVIDIA, the highs of the day, and only $1 off the low. We could go positive on NVIDIA here in a second here. 78.2 now on Bitcoin. Let's go. And look at the VIX dropping. I called the highs. I said I think it's time to sell the VIX. I think it's too high, and you're gonna get burnt if you're going to the wrong side of this. I had a feeling the path of least resistance is not to the downside. So here we are. $4.062 now on the 10-year now. We could see a little bit. Yeah. We could see a little bit of, look, we've had a nice run here, and it could take a little bit off if you're looking to take some profit off. Swing trading, I would not, but if you're scalping today, like I said earlier, this is perfect timing, I think. But I'm not telling anybody what to do. But here we are, the highs of the day.
And Netflix just went positive, so we got Amazon and Netflix going positive.
It was the stock I called this morning on the show. Before this show, I said, look, Netflix is one of those I think looks good, right? Because they're using 78.3 now on Bitcoin. I'm telling you, we're going to go. Look at this. NVIDIA about to go positive on the day right here. Only down 50 cents now on the day. Were you listening on
nice move to the upside. Nice move to the upside across all of them. And Q's broke that
94 on it. There it is. I told you. There we go.
Here we go. Trying to break. Can it get above? You still got
BigBeat still has it. Let me tell you, folks, the BigBeat still's got it. 78.3 right now on the Bitcoin. We're still moving. So look, I'm not scared. I don't get scared on this. And I'll tell you what, I'll tell you another person who isn't scared on all this stuff is Steve Flanagan. He said it last week on the show, and I'm looking forward to bringing him in. 78.4 now in Bitcoin, and now we've just gone positive on NVIDIA. There it is, folks. We did it. Look, I said it. Look, the path of least resistance is not to the downside. All the selling and all the craziness has already been in the markets. So where do we go with this, right? If Trump, anything goes, that's it. Shorts are getting, we just saw it right there. Bear market Ramp Capital, one of my favorites. If you don't watch, you should check out Ramp Capital. He's hilarious on Twitter. But look, that's right. Shorts are getting crushed right now. We know that. And any positive news and anywhere, there's so much negative. We get it to the downside, but any positive is going to push us up. And we see that. And guess what? We just look at that. Look at NVIDIA up 13 cents now in the day. That's what I'm saying. Look, the nervousness overnight was because we just aren't sure what's going to happen. And nothing has changed. Literally nothing has changed. No new positive news has come out. Japan coming to here. We already knew that. President told you over the weekend. Okay, maybe Vandalay. $95 now on NVIDIA. Now we're the upside, right? Look, I said this morning. We're going to go back up. Why? Because everybody's short. And when there's a crowded field, as I call it, I want to be the ticker taker, right? When there's everybody's crowded into one side of a trade, I want to be on the other side of that trade because it will turn around. And here it is. Look at that on Bitcoin there, 78.6. Look at that on NVIDIA, 94.74. We hit 94.99, all positive. Let's get, let's get Steve Flanagan in here. Now, because you know what, he's got to take a victory lap around here.
You got to actually get to positive on the Qs, on the Dow, or on the SPY for that to be the case, guys.
That's
right. A lot of victory laps on.
Yeah, but I'm talking the victory lap for Steve because Flanagan was saying it last week. Look, the policies are in place. Everybody knows what to do, and eventually they're going to bend, right, Steve? So you're kind of what you're saying last week.
That's right, and I'm staying out of politics. I'm not defending, supporting, or against anybody here.
Right.
But
yeah.
Look at my man. We're not in Kansas anymore.
No.
This whole market has totally changed the dynamics. And I think back to my childhood days, back in a cartoon I used to love. When you want to get people's attention, rootin', tootin', cowboy, you come in the room and you start firing off, right? And then everybody's like, whoa, you got everybody's attention. And that's what I think this whole thing on the April 2nd tariffs were about.
But, Steve, there's a better way of getting everybody's attention than just screaming at everybody saying, I'm going to sue you or I'm going to raise tariffs on everybody. That's not a normal politician.
No. Well, he's not a politician, and I totally agree. This is not the best way to do it. I'm totally in that camp. I wish it would have happened a different way, but wait a second. It hasn't happened in 40 plus years.
Agreed on that.
Trying to do it a conventional, hey, let's sit down, let's talk, we agree, and then the agreement gets broken. Gosh, we could go on for hours just talking about every agreement that's never materialized to the fruition point that we wanted it to happen.
Yeah.
So maybe it may be that EU comment you just put up, Steve, about a 0 for 0. That is massive.
That's massive. Massive. It's never happened before.
You've got the Japanese prime minister. Howard, you said you wanted to see other people saying it. The Japanese prime minister came out last night and said, hey, we want to get these tariffs down. We want to agree with the United States.
Want to? We'll see. Again, I ain't buying it for $1. But
okay, but Howard, why? What is it that you're?
Because I don't trust our administration to negotiate with somebody. It's going to be our way or no way, and I don't think that works in diplomatic states. It has never worked. He has a terrible track record of negotiating with other countries when it comes to tariffs.
He does.
And that's how I feel. And I don't think the people he has in place I think the first time he was in office, he had better people in place than he does this time to handle that. I look at it from completely from the diplomatic side of this is that I just worry still. And the markets again, we called that we were coming out of it. I'd point out that you know, and Nvidia is now down 80 basis points again. It went down over a point since we've been talking. You know, the markets are spooked. We're not moving.
I think it goes right back up. I think they're just some profit taking.
They are. It's just we're seeing the volatility.
You made a comment there, Howard, that you thought that this administration's cabinet, I guess, I'll paraphrase for you, is worse than the last one. Is that correct?
It's not any better.
I would argue that it's more political, but I would say that Scott Bessent as Secretary of the Treasury is really good.
Yep.
I would say Howard Lutnick as the CEO and founder of Cantor Fitzgerald is really good. Peter Navarro was in the previous administration. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, I think, is a much better.
I love Rubio. I'm talking about
Rubio is a senator. He understands the government, how the levers work. Whereas in the previous administration,
and that's what worries me about Bessent and Lutnick is their lack of experience in DC. And you can try to say I'm going to force things through whatever bureaucracy is there, but as we know, people who have worked in that bureaucracy for 40 years, it's a lot harder to do. And if word does actually get out that Cantor Fitzgerald has been short the market, what's that going to do?
Yeah, I think there should be some civil.
Listen, on that note, Howard, I heard you say that before. When you're a market maker in the U.S. government bond market, you are naturally long treasuries, right?
Naturally long. That's correct.
So yes, they're long. So is every major bank in the country because that's their natural position. They're always long in the treasuries. But you know, that aside. I love the Jamie Dimon comment. We're not in Kansas. Howard, you're absolutely right. Yeah, this is, you know, until I see, show me the money, you know, until I see it happening, I'm not a believer. This has been a major change. We know change is disruptive. And the one point, Howard, I heard you say earlier that I loved, this is a country that's divided. We don't need more divides. I think Trump may have stepped a little too far in this, but you know, I agree that you know we needed a change. We have to address this deficit is totally out of control.
We can't go on the way we were. Without a doubt, we all believe that. We all know that the money printer just couldn't keep on going forever.
We got a Fed that's behind the curve.
Absolutely.
They you know, okay, I get it. Uncertain. Yeah. There's a lot of uncertainties in the world, but somebody's got to lead. And guess what? The treasuries are down. You're going to spur all the demand in your mortgage markets now. You're going to reduce the deficit financing.
Do you think that mortgages really are? Because again, I talked to some people who have been talking to me about trying to get into the house market that are looking for homes, and they've made it clear that they can't afford it. That it doesn't matter. The mortgage rate, while it helps some people, it's going to help me. And again, I've spoken about this because I am in a different case. I bought a house during the worst of times, and I haven't a free refi, and I'm excited about that. But for a lot of people that didn't buy, it's also hard to buy that house right now.
Now, Howard, that'll help the banks as you refi because you got a free.
That's right. I'm going to get charged for it. I might not get charged for it, but the bank will charge the mortgage company that agreed to do this.
Yeah.
So, I agree with all that.
The pieces, you know, let's focus on what the currency market's telling me with the dollar.
That's what I want to hear, Mister. What are we seeing there?
Dollar index 103.15. Nice bounce off of that spike low. I mean, holy mackerel. But, you know, I was doing a bunch of research, you know, over the weekend. And bear with me 1 second.
You got it.
So we're hearing the EU saying now that, their trade chief, Safcovic, is now saying that the VAT is an important source of income of the EU member states, and we will not change our VAT system.
That's the problem is the EU can't agree if it's raining outside in Germany today. You know, that's a problem.
So the United States has to back off, obviously. The VAT system is their equivalent to our tax system. You can't just like turn that on a dime. But what they have to do is get the concessions on the tariffs. You know, we need a fairer system of tariffs. You can't be selling automobiles over there with a tariff and not over here.
Let's talk about that for a second, Steve.
Absolutely. I think that's a very important thing to explain because I don't think a lot of people understand the difference between how their taxes work and ours.
That's right. I was getting ready to ask the same question. And I think that a lot of people I've heard a lot of rhetoric over the weekend that countries are going to write us checks. And I think people don't really understand that that's not going to happen. That's not how the tariffs work, right? We tariff it on their sides before they get into us, and they don't write checks to the country of the United States, right? Okay, so let's back this up a little bit. Let's just say Trump gets his way. He won't get it completely, we understand, but it'll bend the knee, which is the rhetoric talking point I keep hearing about. Stop bending the knees. Stop saying the bending the knee. It's very anti-political. Start saying it this way: that the rest of the world is seeing it our way. That they have unfairly been a trading partner to the United States. Okay, and I agree with that. The United States has been very good to a lot of countries because we consume. We can't help it. We'll just buy, and you know what? Guess what happens when you consume? So let's just say Trump gets his way. Not even all the way, just so that he can take a victory lap, as I say. Then what, Steve? Then what? What do we do? What's the next thing we have to worry about out of this administration? Well, I didn't get everything I want, and by the way, the markets are now on the highs of the day. So what is it that Trump's going to say? I won, and here's how it is, and now we're okay, and now our $1 trillion a year isn't going to be as bad. Doge has done its thing. I'm the goddamn president of the world, and I'm happy. Is that what's going to happen, or what's going to be different?
What's going to be different is this will be put on the bookshelf, and that'll be the end of it. And now
we had some news coming out. I'm sorry, guys. We must have had some news coming out because that spiked to the upside.
Yeah, we just spiked to the upside, huge everywhere. Is something coming out?
Tick is literally up 1,800. Oil just jumped $2 here.
Steve nailed it.
Hello, there it is, boys and girls.
Although we still need the Dow. But you're gonna get it. It's going.
Something just came out, and
something had to have happened. I don't see it, but something just got us moving.
There's got to be some news. That's what I'm saying. Charts don't mean jack crap when you have news. So if you've been pearl clutching your chart,
1% here. Q's up 1%.
79,600 on Bitcoin. Here we go. We've said this. The path of least resistance is not to the downside. So every short just got absolutely obliterated here.
To understand the computer trading, the model sells. If the next price is now higher, the model hesitates. If the next price is now higher, the model takes back. Then if it keeps going up, the model now has to go up. Now, keep in mind, as I believe the gentleman that joined us on Friday, just forgot his name real quick, but he said that, Bubba. we were at record levels with the standard deviations. So you can understand these model trading algorithms have never seen positions this far in one direction.
Exactly.
So when they begin to turn, Steve, they fire off multitude of orders that the market, it's like
and all those limit orders that were protecting those shorts came off in a second here. Blew them out.
Yep. So what happens
there
next?
Goes Steve. Nailed it. Dow Jones goes positive. There you go, Steve.
What happens next, Steve? This gets put on a bookshelf. Tariffs done. The United States now. What is the next step? You saw the Senate. The Senate passed. The tax reduction, which goes to the House. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of wrangling back and forth. Border security, energy, defense. That's the next step. Deregulation is the next step.
I agree.
All positive, Steve. Tariff, that's gone. Forget it.
And yet an hour ago, everybody was screaming the world's burning and going to hell. I mean, I said this. I said that this is out of control. It's the path of least resistance to the upside because all you need is one good news. We haven't really seen that.
Because
here we go. Tariff legal challenge could be filed as soon as Friday. So it looks like the president will be challenged in court over this. That's what's happening right now. I agree. I said this over and over again. That the president just can't do these tariffs by an executive order.
And this is what I was.
Okay, Trump is now considering a 90-day pause in tariffs for all countries except China. Hassett just said this too as well. So, this is explosion. I mean, to the upside.
That's huge. But, using this international Emergency Economic Powers Act of 1977 does in fact give the president a broad set of powers.
A broad set. And look, I understand EOs probably better than anyone here because I've helped write them.
I'm sure you
craft them. I will tell you that when you go in there, there's a room when you sign the EOs, when you build those EOs out. Sorry, I'm going to do it in DC speak.
Yep.
When you work on those EOs, there are a set of attorneys standing behind you. Some are on your side and some are not on your side. They want to play both sides to make sure they're getting the right answer, right? But ultimately, it's the House Judiciary on the House side, who is Republicans as well. They send their attorneys because they're the ones that got to deal with it, and they got to make sure the president can do this. And then you also have some attorneys that are also Supreme Court attorneys because they want to make sure that it'll pass as the smell test, as they call it in the White House. Smell test, will it pass? So will these things pass? And the answer to the president was probably no, but I'm going to do it anyway and see how I get through. And this sledgehammer politics again. So it's working. And now Hassett's saying, okay, look, Trump's saying 90 days pause. Okay, there might be a legal challenge to this. Let's see. There's 80,000 on Bitcoin just hit right there. This is what I'm saying. This is not how Washington really works. Regardless of how the president wishes he would work or he thinks he can change it, he can't. We still have a constitution and we have to no third term. But here we go. And you know what? There's going to be some give or take here. And I agree with that. We can't live on $1 trillion deficit every year.
Right.
Joe just doing a good thing, maybe not completely. But I am seeing where the markets are going, okay, well, wait a minute. It's not going to be exactly what Trump says. It's not going to be exactly what the Democrats say. It's going to be somewhere in the middle. So, Steve Flanagan, tell me where the middle is, and that's where I'm happy.
The middle is going to be over this next 30 days. You're going to start seeing agreements. Probably within a week, you're going to start seeing. I was on Friday and I said, India and the UK, watch them real quick. I think you could see major agreements very quickly, and that's going to be his victory lap, Steve. He's not going to get a VAT a condition out of Europe, but he will get other conditions. He will get other conditions met, and that's going to be the victory lap. And by the way, once we get through mid-May and you're now got this budget process coming through, tax cuts coming through, the Doge savings perhaps going directly, some of it going directly to taxpayers. Think about the stimulus of a $60 oil price. I mean, there are so many things that are in the works already that are very positive. This has been my thesis. The king dollar will begin to start in around now. I think these are incredible levels. My own advice, my own positioning. And I'm not offering that advice to your viewers, but I think that over this next 30 days is the jostling. I think the lows are probably in place for the dollar index. And I think that now you're looking to take advantage of when? Around the mid-May point, when everything is now on the bookshelf. Tariff, what are you talking about? That's old. That's old news. Now we're talking budgets. We're talking the economy. We're talking unleashing deregulation. It'll be a whole nother thing. And Steve, you nailed it. Yeah, we haven't lost our Constitution.
Right.
The Constitution is firmly in place. They will be challenged. It'll be tied up in court. And who knows? It may be in June when someone finally says, that wasn't really good. But that's old. That'll be done. Finished. Right. Yeah, okay, fine. But we got the concessions we were looking for.
Okay. What exact concessions are you looking for? I still haven't caught that one. What is it that you're looking? You're looking for? Okay, I'm sorry. Are you looking for China to bend the knee, as the Republicans have been saying? Are you looking for Japan to go to zero tariffs? What is it that you're really looking for to make us all feel good?
Simple. A fairer trading system, ex-China.
Okay, but what's fair? Okay, I see what you're saying. So your fair would be as what Elon is predicting and saying, I want zero tariffs everywhere?
I think that would be the ideal. I don't think you're ever going to get a zero tariff. You may end up with a 10% tariff in the US for good, which, okay, if that was the only thing that came out of April 2nd, the markets would have rallied, right? If that was the only thing that happened, 10% across the board tariff,
Absolutely.
everybody would have said, okay, yeah, okay, I can deal with that.
I like that. Yeah.
Agreed. Agreed.
So it's possible that stays in place and everything else is wiped out. But this is, in my view, this is not about the rest of the world. We'll get concessions. And
India's foreign minister announced that they spoke to the U.S. Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, said that on early conclusion of a bilateral trade deal. That's good. So here we go. We're seeing it now. And India's already,
China is the other issue. What this does is it peels away the world from probably the last 4 years of China's influence throughout the other countries. And it peels them away back into the U.S. And I think that when you look at the bigger picture, if we go back in time before the tariff talk, it was China, 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 China. I mean, everybody's worried about what the China's, and then take all these advancements that AI have come out of China. You got to feel people in the United States are very worried that China's doing low-cost AI. They're undercutting. Look at the data centers in the U.S. That's been just absolutely crushed.
Yes.
That's what I look for. A fairer trading system, which I believe we're going to get. The EU is already talking. Now you got India, you got Vietnam, you got Japan. Next up will probably be the UK. I don't think it gets any. I think the biggest of all of them is going to be Mexico and Canada.
So do we get a new CMCSA or a new NAFTA?
We get something new, but it'll stay as the original, whatever they call USMCA.
CMCSA,
yeah. The key point here is, and I think this is where Canada has made a strategically wrong error. Canada is very much allied with China and has been using Canada as a spigot to pass in Chinese goods to the U.S., which has undercut the U.S. manufacturing base. That's something Canada cannot hide from. And they're going to have to come to terms with that. And when they do, and I do believe they will, I think Mark Carney's a smart guy. He sees that there's no way of getting around those facts. But I think Mexico, that's something that's going to be a very positive arrangement for the U.S. And it also will replace China as our major Steve, you said it, we're addicted to low-cost items. It'll be Mexico where that comes in. There'll have to be a little bit fairer trade. You can't run 180 billion surplus with us in a fair trade agreement. But in currency speak, watch the dollar MEX, watch the dollar CAD. The dollar MEX right now hit my objective of 2078. We're right now at 2057. I look for the MEX. If you're looking for a point, 2020 right now. That's a point. If we begin to break back below that, and that means MEX is being bought versus the U.S., that could be a precursor for what I'm expecting is some major agreement between United States and Mexico. CAD, they've got elections at the end of the month. I think you'll see major positive news in CAD, but CAD and MEX, those are the two big ones that I'm really watching. I think the rest of the world will make concessions.
Well, so far, Mexico and Canada, we didn't do anything versus them, quite honestly, because of the fact, quite honestly, that wouldn't have gotten through courts at all. That's why we pulled those off.
And we're about to go back negative here once the
news I didn't want to say anything there, guys. That was a short-lived burst. Like I said, we're going to see these rip your face off runs that quickly get sold off. That would be one of them.
But I think that's stupid. I mean, I get it that they're probably, if you're long.
I mean, this is market structure, though, Steve. You've seen it, right? This is, we always talk about it during, when you're at a bear market, which is where we're at right now. We can come out of it as quickly as these tariffs come off. But at this point, we are down in all of them again.
People are doing the same. Oh, good. I'm going to short some more. Nah, I don't think it's a good idea
right now. Especially with news like this. I will take it. I will be interested to see how this plays out, because if I was a Democrat right now, I'd be saying, wow, look at that. Trump gave up already. And if that starts hitting Twitter everywhere, 90-day pause is his weakness.
Well, here's the reason why
that's what worries me.
CNBC just said there's no confirmation as of now on a 90-day tariff pause.
Yeah, that's what worries me, is this inconsistencies and things slipping out of the White House that aren't supposed to slip out, and some of those type of things are just a little bit
White House I've ever seen in my life. I've said that before.
Yeah, you've been all over that, Steve. We're not used to seeing that. And again, for those of us that have been around DC for a long time, what's said in the White House is usually left in the White House, and what you get is a very painted picture that was set up. And in this White House,
this is the
which I kind of like. I like hearing what's going on. Don't get me wrong. I see you smiling there, Mr. Flanagan. I know you love it.
They're saying CNBC saying that the White House is not.
I love it. I mean, listen, again, I have no problem with that part.
CNBC now saying the White House is not confirming the trade pause yet.
Yes.
So that's what happens
there. Because I think that's what he's realizing is that, the first comments on social media, I guess, were probably from some folks that he follows that said, look, he's the one that brought the bended knees. He's going to do this. And now he's saying, oh, that's not me. I hate these fights. I just don't like them. I wish they'd stop.
I mean, I'm staying out of the politics.
Yeah, I'm with you. I try. It just,
but you are dealing with a gentleman that has come out of The Apprentice. This guy is so in tune with feedback. And,
absolutely.
Clearly the weekend feedback, including the protests on Saturday, registered. And he's not going to come. They're not going to confirm a trade pause until he can come out and say, hey, Japan, Europe,
right, they're on board.
Ba-boom, ba-boom. And so in order to get these negotiations.
Palantir has been halted here due to volatility, PLTR. If you don't mind pulling that chart up there.
You've got it, my friend.
PLTR. We are seeing some halts. Sorry, Steve.
That's cool.
Starting to move PLTR there. Interestingly.
Halted to the downside.
Wow, we've seen a lot. Maybe some stocks now are starting to get whiplashed here a little bit.
Yeah, like I said, that's what worried me is that was a little bit of a bull trap there.
But I'll tell you one thing: if you were long this morning with me and you were short the VIX, you
absolutely
rushed it today.
So again, we tell everybody, right? Take profit.
I still think we go positive on the day. I still think we do.
All right, Steve, let me throw one right down the middle of the pipe for you. So my research over the weekend on this, executive powers that he has used with this IEEPA act that he put tariffs. Okay, so what conditions would be met for PPT, Plunge Protection Team, to come into the marketplace?
Oh, my God. Did you just say the PPT already? Oh, my God. For those of you who don't know, in the previous administration, and of course, in that there were sets of people economic people like ourselves inside the White House would have they were nicknamed the PPT, the Plunge Protection Team, and those were people that were that if the market started to fall, that they would come in and they would say something positive about the markets, and the markets would go back up, and it was protecting the market. Look, I get it.
I mean, $9 trillion in wealth disappearing in 3 days. Where
is but they did the opposite. So that's the other part. I think that's a great point, Mr. Flanagan, is what I was hoping this weekend is Bessent would come out and have some positive sort of rhetoric. And instead the rhetoric was, we know what we're doing and you're going to have to suffer to get what we need.
And that's right. And that's why I've been doing this research. I mean,
Now, Steve, you made a very good point about the IEEPA, and I put the link on so everyone can see it. Okay, that's the CRS. If you're in Quasar Markets,
you can pull. You
can actually download all of these files that Steve's talking about, so that you're not lost, right? And I am going to put this into our system, our AI system, and pull up just exactly what Steve's asking about and talking about. This is what we built Quasar for, was to bring it to the next level, right? So when we talk about things like that, especially now that we're talking about politics and government and all that, that you'll be able to understand a lot clearer. And right now, if you pull that up, right now there are 4 bills, 2 in the House and 2 in the Senate right now about the IIEA. So,
it would have to meet some conditions. But my question to, the AI was, what conditions would need to be met for the president to step in and say, look, Plunge Protection Team doesn't need anybody's approval outside of the president. It's under the Treasury Department. Yep. And if Bessent's making those comments and he's got his hands, and without saying it much, but I certainly know its operations quite well, having been a market maker in the world's markets, You know, these things, man, are incredible behind the scenes. Let's face it, every price you see traded has about a 3 to 5 second delay.
Right.
That's right.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That's 3,000 milliseconds. You could go in, out, in, out, in, out about 6 times
14 times. Yeah.
before
Oh yeah.
anything's even shown. So my point is, our conditions. What's the condition? It would have to be an emergency, and the emergency would have to be that the president feels that there is somebody dealing
Well, wait a minute. That's right. But
national security.
okay, but I will say that's right. That's been the thought process over the weekend. And I'll post it here. I love all this stuff, Steve. You're absolutely right. I'm gonna see if I can't do it. If I can, I'm gonna share my screen
Go for it, buddy.
so that you guys understand what Steve Flanagan is talking about. I love all this stuff. This is right up my alley.
I threw you the fastball.
Right. And no, I love this stuff. And the president did say this is why he's calling it. He said, okay, you're right, Steve. So in order to place these tariffs and to make these changes, there has to be a national security economic issue of some type. And what he is saying, that this is the fact sheet from the White House. This is what he is saying, that we need to increase our competitive edge, protect our sovereignty, and strengthen our national and economic security. And this came out on the 2nd, so only 5 days ago. So right. They're absolutely right. This is what the president was saying. And now when I say that he doesn't have a plan, this is what I mean. Doesn't have a plan, but he is saying I have the authority because I'm saying this is the reason. The problem that people are seeing is this the challenge? Is this really an issue? When the bill was passed and the president signed it in 1977, it was a War Powers Act issue, right? It was Vietnam was right after that. There was a lot of issues that were going on around that, and people were worried. We just went through Nixon, and there was a lot of issues back then, right? And we were coming into Carter, right, was next president. So we weren't really sure. There were a lot of issues. So the president is saying the reason I'm doing this, they're calling it a national emergency is to address the national emergency posed by the large and persistent trade deficit and the VAT. And of course, that's what you just heard from Europe saying, you're not touching my VAT. So this is telling you, oh, well, you know what? Maybe the VAT, we won't do anything. So, hey, there are some issues here.
But with this Emergency Powers Act and then Scott Bessent, so for the viewers, from my experience, watch Scott Bessent. Right. He is the Treasury Secretary.
Is he the cooler head, though, that Navarro is saying?
Yes, and he's got his hands on what if this gets out of hand. The president's already got an emergency signed. There's a lot of things that the government can do without even telling anybody. The Treasury Department, it's in their purview to step in. My experience all the way back is PPT, Plunge Protection Team. Trust me, it is well known in the government, as Steve has highlighted. They were very active in buying equities during the 2008 meltdown.
They were.
In fact, they were very clear in saying that it was being used to buy equities.
Absolutely.
How do they do that? They go into these ETFs, and it's all done through these ETFs. When you buy one share of an ETF, it sends out a basket order into the marketplace. But when you buy 5,000 shares, it sends out a very large, quick, instantaneous order into the marketplace. And that's why these markets are moving the way they are, and volatility is so high.
And now I'm going to throw a curveball to you, and because I had to remember it too, because I wasn't quite remember exactly, because I was a child when it happened. But who coined the term PPT and Plunge Protection Team?
Well, that came out, if I recall, if you go back to FDR when he confiscated all the gold.
That's right.
Where did the gold go?
And the second one was Ronald Reagan, right? I mean, Reagan was buying as well, and the third one in 1997 during Obama. So during our team, right, Clinton team. So I will say that Are you? I hate to ask this question, but are you saying that we need a PPT again?
No. But what I'm saying is, watch Scott Bessent when he's coming out saying, "Hey, everything's cool. We're not going to recession." There's a plan, a master plan. He's sitting there as the
Why are they not sharing it with the people? Why are they keeping it to themselves?
Because they want the concessions globally. They want to use this media. They want to splash it all over. They want their little victory lap because, Steve, this guy is a master at this stuff back from The Apprentice. You know, he knows the televisions. He knows opinions. He knows how to manipulate the narratives. He's going to take the negatives because this negative narrative that's grown in the last 5 days, in a month's time, it'll be history. People will be like, "Oh yeah, that's already old. We overreacted on a negative side. It wasn't as bad as we thought." Granted, when you make a big splash, you better be holding on, because when you make a big splash, those ripples hit the walls and come back sometimes a lot bigger, which, is all the fears we all have. Every one of us has this fear. Like, whoa, maybe this was a little too much. And I agree, but something has to get done. And that's why I looked into this Emergency Powers Act that he's implemented. And I want to understand. I want to find details. I want to know what conditions the government can step in and go, whoa, enough is enough. What happens if they suddenly say, "Hey, China, you've been dumping our U.S. equity markets? That's wrong. You shouldn't be doing that." And greasing the skid. Whoa, he's already got it in this act. That would be national security.
Right.
So yeah, but the only thing that I'll point out there, guys, again, is that almost every court in the United States, up to the Supreme Court, is against him. He hasn't won any of these challenges across Doge or across
Supreme Court's been on his side.
The what?
The Supreme Court's ruled in his favor on a couple of events.
No, on a couple, but in general, he's lost like 80% of.
They haven't made it to the Supreme Court yet. That's why
but the ones that have mattered again. But it doesn't have to go that far. If there's if a federal judge puts puts an injunction in place, it stops what's happening until it does. And the wheels of courts take a long time. So while that threat of that is great, is what happens is the injunction, they know what court to go to. They go to the Southern District of New York. They hit California. They hit certain places that they know their judges are set up. Unfortunately, that's the checks and balances we have in place. And I'm not saying this is something against our government, against the administration.
The White House is now saying that the 90-day pause is fake news.
Yeah.
Okay, so there you go, back to the dollar. But so let's watch the dollar index, 103.13 right now. I think we need to close above last week's close of around a 102.60 zone. If we don't see the dollar index making new lows or making pushes below the 102 level, well, it's not foreign selling that's any more involved here. And that's going to be a big point. That's done. And so I'd be watching that very carefully. I'm looking at around a 102, 65, 70 zone of support right now. I do think that the dollar index could put in a higher close this week. And that's what I'm really looking at. I'm watching the dollar MEX. I think that the MEX could be something. If we begin to see the dollar trading lower versus the MEX, that could be indicating the U.S. and Mexico. I'm putting the Canada aside right now because they have.
Steve, I just want to get back to Mexico for 1 second here, because you had that 2083 as a spot. You still think that if we break above that, we see an explosive move to the upside?
Right. I felt 2078 was my objective on the upside. We've essentially hit it. If we begin to make much more headroom above the 87, let's call 2087, 2088, that could open up the upside into, back into uncharted.
Just want to let our viewers know, because you've nailed all of those moves when they hit those levels and go above. You called it on the DXY last week that if it dropped below the key level that you had there, which I just moved, it was, I forget what that, 103.47, it would move significantly, and you called that all the way down to 101. So, that's why I just want to point out to our viewers that, how good you are at this and hit those levels.
And remember, the dollar yen is a safe haven currency. The yen is the safe haven. So when dollar yen trades down, That's the world expressing themselves, saying, I don't know where to go. Gold's down, Bitcoin's down, equities, everything's down. I buy yen. Yen is the safe haven. And that is going flatline now. It's holding in here at 147, 1020 zone. If that is not going down into the 146s, 145s, that's also telling you money's already parked safe haven and it's starting to come back out and looking to deploy with what Steve is talking about. You know, I'm not afraid these markets are going to have a self-corrective mechanism. Watch the dollar yen, you get above a 147.50 zone, and that's beginning to say money's coming back out of safe haven and perhaps redeploying itself. And obviously the U.S. equity market would be one of the prime recipients of that redeployment.
Awesome. I've actually been watching, Steve, on a little bit of a different take for you here. I've been watching this bottom trend line that goes all the way back to 2023 here on the yen. You can see how it held up really nicely here. So again, you pointed out some of these things that always seem to hold up in the currency markets, and that bottom trend line nailed it like a champ.
And Steve, as a member during Bob Rubin's days when the United States and Japan were fighting it out tooth and nail, Bob Rubin came out and actually said, well, we don't mind a stronger yen. And oh my goodness, I was sitting at the helm when that comment came out. In fact, I was on CNBC a number of times along opposite Bob Rubin and made comments like, but you said it, We all
like freaked out on that one.
Yeah. And so the United States and Japan have a really tight agreement around the value of the dollar yen. Yes. And the chart you just showed, if the yen begins to appreciate, giving 25 years of being short yen as a carry trade, Japan is not going to want that at the precipice of a recovery. So watch Japan. That could be a real quick one as to negotiations on tariffs.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mr. Flanagan. Markets are continuing to move to the downside again. We see the tick down almost 1,000. Advanced decline has moved up to negative 6,000 here, 61.65. The VIX has moved back above 51, almost to 52 here. Qs are down back below that 416 we opened up at. So they are on the downside.
It proves one thing, though, right now. It proves one thing. That any good news is pushing the market back up. So I would not be short this market.
Yep, I'd watch for those rip your face off like you just saw. We watched it here on the show. Be quick, be nimble, and I'm going to let you take it on, Mr. Flanagan, with your favorite line. What should Jack not do?
Jack, don't get caught on the candlestick, man. Come on, be quick.
We will see you on Wednesday, Mr. Flanagan, Mr. BigBeat. We will see you again tomorrow morning. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Be safe out there in your trading day.